Hello, my dear listeners. My name is Anna, and I'm so grateful you've chosen to spend these quiet evening moments with me. Tonight, I want to carry you away to one of the most breathtaking places I've ever encountered, Milford Sound in New Zealand's South Island. I still remember my first glimpse of those towering granite walls, rising like ancient cathedrals from mirror-still waters, and the way the air itself seemed to shimmer with an almost sacred silence, broken only by the distant whisper of waterfalls threading silver ribbons down impossible heights. There's something about this fjord that speaks to the deepest part of our souls, where the emerald depths hold secrets older than memory itself. As we begin our gentle journey together, I wonder, can you imagine what it might feel like to float between earth and sky, where the boundaries between water and stone blur into something almost dreamlike? Let us begin our passage into this sanctuary of stone and water, where time moves differently, and the very air holds whispers of ancient glaciers. Picture yourself aboard a small vessel, its hull cutting through water so perfectly still it mirrors the world above with startling clarity. The morning light filters through a gossamer veil of mist, painting everything in soft pastels pearl gray, blending into the faintest blush of rose, while deeper shadows pool like liquid sapphire in the crevices of towering cliffs. Your fingertips trail along the smooth wooden railing, worn silk soft by countless hands before yours, still cool with the memory of night, but beginning to warm under the gentle caress of dawn. The air carries the crisp, mineral scent of snow-fed streams, mingling with something deeper. The green breath of ancient rainforests clinging to vertical walls, rich with moss and fern, and the secret life that thrives in perpetual twilight. As we glide deeper into Milford Sound's embrace, the silence becomes a living thing, so complete it seems to have weight and texture. Then, like music composed by the earth itself, comes the distant murmur of water finding its way down stone. Not the harsh crash of waves, but something infinitely more patient, more eternal. The sound grows slowly, revealing layers. The soft percussion of droplets meeting the fjord's surface, the gentle sigh of wind through hidden valleys, and beneath it all, the almost inaudible hum of the deep itself. The temperature shifts around you like a gentle embrace, cool enough to raise the finest texture of awareness along your arms, yet touched with an underlying warmth that speaks of the coming day. Humidity kisses your skin with the lightest touch, carrying microscopic jewels of moisture that catch the light and vanish, leaving only the sensation of absolute purity in the air you breathe. Now the cliffs begin to reveal their true majesty, rising on either side like the walls of a cathedral built by time itself. These are not mere rocks, but living sculptures carved by ice and water over millennia. Their surfaces painted in subtle gradations of charcoal and dove gray, with veins of green where life has found purchase in the smallest cracks. Waterfalls appear like silver scarves thrown carelessly over dark shoulders, some barely more than whispered threads, others bold cascades that fill the air with their music. Your vessel moves through this liquid corridor with dreamlike slowness, allowing every moment to unfold naturally. The scent around you evolves as we travel deeper. Now, there's the green fragrance of wet stone, overlaid with the crystalline purity of glacial melt, and something that might be the breath of clouds themselves, sweet and thin and impossibly clean. Against your cheek, the air moves in the gentlest currents, carrying temperatures that shift like silk scarves cooler, where shadows fall across the water, warmer where sunlight finds its way between the peaks. Your skin becomes a living map of these subtle changes, each breath drawing in air so pure it seems to cleanse you from the inside out. The water beneath our small craft transforms from mirror to liquid mercury as the light shifts, sometimes so clear you can see down into emerald depths, other moments reflecting the sky with such perfection that up and down lose their meaning. Schools of silver fish move like living quicksilver far below, their passage marked only by the faintest shimmer, while above, wisps of cloud drift between peaks with movements so slow they might be the dreams of sleeping giants. Here in this place, where the earth has folded itself into impossible beauty, every surface tells a story written in textures your eyes can almost feel. The rough-hewn granite worn smooth in places by countless storms, the velvet darkness of shadows pooled in secret grottos, the crystalline sparkle where waterfalls have carved themselves temporary homes in living rock. The sounds continue to layer and shift around us, creating an ever-changing symphony. Sometimes the silence returns, so profound it seems to echo in your bones, broken only by the gentle lap of water against stone somewhere in the distance. And then, as if summoned by the quietude itself, comes a sound that seems to belong to another world entirely. The distant call of a bird whose voice carries notes of liquid gold across the water. Perhaps it's a bellbird, that creature the Maori call Koromako, whose song can travel impossible distances through the still air of these protected valleys, each note hanging suspended like a dewdrop before dissolving into the vast cathedral of stone around us. Our vessel drifts toward a hidden alcove where the fjord's walls curve inward, creating a secret chamber open to the sky. Here, the water takes on a quality I've never witnessed anywhere else. Not quite turquoise, not quite jade, but some impossible color that seems to glow from within, as if lit by by bioluminescent dreams. The surface tension holds patterns of tiny ripples that spread outward in perfect concentric circles, created by nothing more visible than a water strider's delicate touch, or perhaps the kiss of a single leaf falling from heights we cannot see. As we enter this natural sanctuary, the air itself seems to thicken with tranquility, carrying new fragrances that speak of hidden ecosystems thriving in perpetual mist. There's the honey-sweet scent of rata blossoms blooming impossibly high on vertical gardens, mixed with the earthy richness of tree ferns, unfurling their ancient spirals in crevices where soil has somehow found a way to gather and nurture life. Beneath these green notes lies something more mysterious. Perhaps the mineral breath of deep caves that honeycomb these cliffs unseen, or the ozone freshness that follows in the wake of countless waterfalls as they ionize the air with their eternal dance. Your boat's gentle motion creates the subtlest rhythm against your body, a slow rocking that seems synchronized with your own breathing, encouraging each exhale to release a little more tension. Each inhale to draw in this rare atmosphere that feels almost medicinal in its purity. The vessel's wooden deck beneath your feet holds the warmth of morning sun while remaining solid and reassuring, like a meditation cushion floating through paradise. Above us, the sky visible between the towering peaks has transformed into a canvas of the softest blue imaginable, painted with clouds that move like slow brushstrokes across the heavens. These aren't the hurried, wind-driven formations of open landscapes, but rather the leisurely migrations of vapor that belong to this protected realm, where weather systems seem to pause and contemplate their own beauty before moving on. A seal surfaces nearby with barely a ripple, its dark eyes curious and unafraid, watching our passage with the calm dignity of a creature perfectly at home in its watery domain. Its whiskers glisten with droplets that catch the light like tiny prisms. And when it disappears again, the water closes over its departure so seamlessly, it might have been nothing more than a dream made manifest for just one perfect moment. The temperature around you continues its gentle dance. And now you notice how the air seems to hold pockets of different warmth, like invisible layers of the most delicate fabric, where shadows from the peaks create natural alcoves. The coolness carries hints of winter snow still clinging to distant summits, while patches of direct sunlight bring touches of warmth that seem to penetrate not just your skin, but something deeper, loosening knots of worry you didn't even know you carried. As we drift further into Milford Sound's secret heart, the cliffs reveal new textures that seem almost alive surfaces that gleam with a patina of moisture so fine it creates a living canvas where light plays in ways that seem to defy physics. Some areas appear almost black with wetness, while others catch the light and throw it back in subtle bronze and copper tones, as if the rock itself has been polished by centuries of mist and rain into something resembling volcanic glass. The acoustic properties of this natural amphitheater create their own magic. Your own quiet breathing seems to harmonize with the space around you, while the distant sound of our boat's engine, so gentle it's more vibration than noise, creates barely perceptible echoes that return from the cliffs transformed, softened, almost musical. Sometimes these echoes layer upon themselves until they become something like whale song, deep and resonant, and somehow comforting in a way that reaches past conscious thought. New waterfalls reveal themselves as we round gentle curves in the fjord's embrace, each one unique in its personality and voice. Some create fine mists that hang in the air like suspended silk, cooling your face with touches so light they're felt more than consciously noticed. Others crash into natural pools carved from solid rock over eons, their percussion creating rhythms that seem to sync with your heartbeat, gradually slowing it to match the patient tempo of geological time. The fragrance of the air shifts again as we encounter a grove of southern beech trees, somehow thriving on a narrow ledge high above, their leaves creating a gentle rustling that carries down to us, mixed with the sweet, clean scent of chlorophyll and the faintest hint of resin. This natural perfume mingles with the ever-present note of pure water. Not just any water, but the specific clarity that comes from glacial origins, filtered through countless layers of ancient stone. Your hands rest loosely on the railing now, and you notice how the smooth wood seems to pulse gently with the boat's movement, creating the most subtle massage against your palms. The sensation travels up your arms like a gentle current, encouraging your shoulders to soften, your neck to release, your entire being to settle more deeply into this floating meditation. Through one of Earth's most sacred spaces, the fjord widens now into a broader basin where ancient glacial forces once carved a temporary resting place. And here the afternoon light begins its slow transformation into something more golden, more forgiving. Particles of pollen and microscopic life drift through these sun-warmed columns of air, creating barely visible galaxies that swirl and dance in slow motion, each mote a tiny planet in its own weightless orbit. Your clothing moves against your skin with each gentle sway of the vessel, the fabric creating whisper-soft friction that grounds you in physical comfort while your mind floats free. The sensation is like being wrapped in the finest cashmere that breathes with you, adjusting to every micro movement of your relaxed form. Here, where the sound opens into its widest embrace, we encounter something extraordinary. A family of dolphins moving through the depths. With such fluid grace, they appear to be swimming through liquid starlight. Their dorsal fins cut the surface with surgical precision, leaving trails that catch the light and hold it for heartbeats before dissolving back into the greater mirror of the water. When they breathe, the soft percussion of their exhalations adds a rhythmic counterpoint to the fjord's natural symphony, ancient and reassuring. The cliffs here tell different stories, painted in layers of sediment laid down when these peaks rested beneath primordial seas. Bands of rust-colored iron oxide alternate with streaks of pale limestone, creating natural artworks that stretch hundreds of feet skyward. These geological paintings seem to shift and breathe in the changing light, revealing new patterns and hidden faces as shadows lengthen and perspectives alter with our gradual movement through the water. Somewhere high above, invisible but unmistakably present, the sound of wind through alpine grasses reaches us, a sustained note like a bow drawn across the strings of the world itself. This aerial music carries with it the essence of mountain meadows we cannot see, places where native daisies and buttercups bloom in secret gardens known only to the clouds and the occasional wandering tar. The water temperature around our hull shifts perceptibly as we encounter currents from different sources here, slightly warmer where a hidden thermal spring feeds the fjord from below. They're cooler where glacial melt finds its way down through underground channels carved in perpetual darkness. These liquid highways create their own weather patterns in miniature, generating the faintest updrafts that lift moisture-laden air in spirals too gentle to see, but substantial enough to feel as they brush across your cheeks like the breath of sleeping angels. A new fragrance emerges from somewhere beyond immediate sight, the distinctive sweetness of manuka flowers, that miraculous bloom whose nectar creates honey with healing properties known to generations of New Zealand's people. The scent arrives in waves, stronger and then fainter, suggesting vast hillsides of these hardy shrubs spreading their twisted branches in defiance of the harsh alpine conditions that would defeat lesser plants. Our vessel's wake spreads behind us in a perfect V, disturbing the mirror surface just enough to create patterns that hypnotize with their mathematical precision. Each ripple catches and reflects fragments of the surrounding landscape, breaking the solid forms of cliffs and sky into abstract impressions that reassemble themselves with each gentle undulation. Watching these liquid kaleidoscopes could occupy hours of peaceful contemplation, each configuration unique and unrepeatable. As we approach another curve in the fjord's serpentine embrace, the acoustic environment transforms once more. Here, the combination of cliff angles and water depth creates what acousticians might call a natural reverb chamber, where even the smallest sounds, the whisper of water against stone, the distant crack of settling rock, the almost inaudible hum of insects in hidden gardens, gain resonance and depth, as if the landscape itself has become a musical instrument waiting to be played by the gentlest touch. Your pulse has synchronized now with this unhurried rhythm of discovery, each heartbeat measured against the eternal patience of these ancient forms. The steady circulation of your blood seems to echo the tidal movements that twice daily bring subtle changes to the fjord's water level, connecting your most intimate biological rhythms to cycles that predate human consciousness by eons. The late afternoon brings with it a shift in the visual spectrum surrounding us. Colors deepen and warm, transforming the earlier palette of cool grays and silvers into something richer, more complex. The water takes on qualities of burnished copper in the direct light, while maintaining its emerald mystery in the shadowed depths. Cliff faces that appeared monochromatic in the morning now reveal subtle burgundies and deep purples, the rock's true mineral composition unveiled by the sun's changing angle. Thermal layers in the air create almost imperceptible lensing effects, causing distant waterfalls to shimmer like mirages, their one moment, and softly blurred the next. These optical illusions add to the dreamlike quality of our passage, suggesting that perhaps the boundaries between reality and vision are more fluid here than in the everyday world we've temporarily left behind. A light breeze arrives from the direction of the Tasman Sea, carrying with it the faint but unmistakable essence of kelp forests and tidal pools, reminding us that this sanctuary of stone and sky remains connected to vast oceanic systems, where whales sing their ancient songs and currents carry messages between continents. This maritime breath mixes with the alpine fragrances already layering the air, creating olfactory harmonies as complex as any perfumer's masterwork. The vessel's gentle motion has become so perfectly integrated with your body's rhythms that the boundary between floating and simply being seems to dissolve entirely, leaving you suspended in a state of pure awareness, where the distinction between observer and observed fades into peaceful unity. With this cathedral of living stone beneath our floating sanctuary, the fjord floor reveals itself through crystalline layers, where ancient tree trunks rest in perfect preservation, their bark still intact after centuries submerged in these oxygen-poor depths. These underwater forests create shadowy geometries far below, their ghostly forms adding another dimension to our liquid cathedral. While schools of native blue cod weave between the sunken branches in patterns that seem choreographed by currents invisible to us above. The distinctive call of a kaka echoes from somewhere within the vertical rainforest clothing the cliff tops. Its raucous voice, a startling contrast to the serenity surrounding us, yet somehow perfectly placed in this wild symphony. These alpine parrots, with their olive brown plumage and mischievous intelligence, remind us that life persists in every niche of this seemingly impossible landscape. From the deepest underwater canyons to the highest windswept ledges, where only the most determined creatures dare to nest, our passage disturbs a small flotilla of jellyfish drifting near the surface, their translucent bells pulsing with movements so deliberate they appear to be breathing underwater. Each creature trails gossamer tentacles that catch fragments of filtered sunlight, transforming them into living fiber optic displays that flicker and fade as they propel themselves through their liquid medium with ancient grace. The sandstone walls here bear the signatures of prehistoric seas, their surfaces embedded with fossilized shells and marine creatures from eras when these peaks lay beneath tropical waters. Running your fingers along these textured chronicles would reveal the raised outlines of creatures whose names exist only in scientific journals. Their calcium carbonate shells, now part of the mountain's very bones, adding a tactile timeline to the visual grandeur surrounding us. Pockets of warmer air descend from sun-heated ledges high above, creating invisible columns of thermal comfort that embrace you momentarily before dissolving into the fjord's general coolness. These natural heat lamps provide brief respites that seem to penetrate through clothing and skin directly to muscles that didn't realize they needed warming, releasing microtensions with the efficiency of a master therapist's touch. The distinctive fragrance of native clematis drifts down from impossible heights, its vanilla-scented blooms adding an unexpected sweetness to the air's complex bouquet. This climbing plant, known to local Maori as puwananga, somehow finds purchase on sheer rock faces, its star-shaped flowers creating celestial gardens visible only to the occasional helicopter or the most dedicated rock climber brave enough to venture into these vertical wilderness areas. Spider webs stretched between overhanging rocks catch the afternoon light, their silk transformed into networks of platinum wire that vibrate with frequencies too subtle for human ears, but visible as minute oscillations that speak of the microbreezes constantly flowing through this natural wind tunnel. These arachnid architects have chosen their building sites with extraordinary precision, locating their traps exactly where flying insects must pass, creating deadly beautiful galleries that span gaps no human engineer would dare attempt to bridge. The taste of the air itself becomes a sensory experience worth savoring, carrying notes of oxygenated purity that seem to cleanse your palate with each breath. There's a mineral quality reminiscent of the finest mountain spring water, overlaid with organic compounds released by photosynthesizing plants, and the negative ions generated by countless waterfalls, creating an atmospheric cocktail that seems designed specifically to promote the deepest possible relaxation. Unusual geological formations reveal themselves as we continue our unhurried exploration. Natural arches carved by patient water action, creating windows through solid rock that frame distant vistas like carefully composed photographs. Through these stone portals, glimpses of hidden valleys appear and vanish, suggesting landscapes within landscapes, secret worlds accessible only to the wind and rain, and the occasional adventurous bird. The underwater visibility shifts dramatically as we encounter a thermocline where warmer surface water meets the colder depths, creating a liquid boundary that acts like an underwater aurora, bending and distorting images of the bottom into abstract impressions that ripple and dance with hypnotic beauty. Fish swimming through this optical barrier appear to stretch and compress like creatures from a Salvador Dali painting, their forms elongated and ethereal. Wisps of cloud begin to form spontaneously where moisture-laden air meets the cooling temperatures of evening shadows, creating miniature weather systems that last only minutes before dissipating. These ephemeral formations spiral and twist in slow motion, their ghostly forms adding temporal art installations to the permanent gallery of stone and water surrounding us. The magnetic qualities of the iron-rich rock faces seem to influence the very air around them, creating subtle electromagnetic fields that some visitors report as tingling sensations along their arms and neck. Whether real or imagined, these phenomena add another layer to the fjord's reputation as a place where the normal rules of the everyday world bend and flex like light through water. Native galaxias, tiny freshwater fish endemic to New Zealand, create fleeting silver explosions just beneath the surface as they feed on insects foolish enough to land on the water's skin. These feeding frenzies last only seconds, but add punctuation marks of movement to the otherwise languid rhythm of our passage, reminding us that beneath the apparent tranquility lies a complex ecosystem of hunters and hunted, each playing their role in the fjord's ancient ecological balance. The declining sun begins to paint the higher peaks in shades of amber and rose gold, while the water level maintains its cooler palette of deep blues and forest greens, creating a color separation that seems to divide our world into distinct thermal zones. Your body responds intuitively to these visual temperature cues, imagining warmth where golden light touches and coolness where shadows reign, demonstrating the profound connection between sight and sensation that governs so much of human comfort. Salt crystals carried inland by persistent sea breezes have created natural sculptures on exposed rock faces, their geometric patterns catching and refracting light in ways that transform simple mineral deposits into glittering installations worthy of the world's finest galleries. These accidental artworks appear and disappear with changes in humidity and rainfall, making each visit to Milford Sound a unique visual experience that can never be perfectly replicated. Our vessel's movement through these sacred waters seems to slow further as evening approaches, each moment expanding to accommodate deeper appreciation of details that daylight's urgency might have rushed past unnoticed, creating space for the kind of profound peace that emerges only when time itself becomes irrelevant. The first bats of evening emerge from hidden roosts tucked within limestone caves, their ultrasonic calls creating frequencies that exist just beyond human hearing, yet somehow register as the faintest tickle against your eardrums. These native pekapka weave through the air columns above us with precision that defies comprehension, their leathery wings catching updrafts invisible to our senses as they begin their nightly hunt for the moths and midges that dance in growing twilight. Phosphorescence begins to gather in the fjord's darker recesses, microscopic organisms awakening to their nocturnal luminescence in response to the cooling water temperatures. These bioluminescent plankton create trails of liquid starlight that follow in our wake, each disturbance of the surface triggering cascades of blue-green fire that fade like dying embers, only to reignite with each gentle movement of fish or falling leaf breaking the water's increasingly mysterious surface. The granite faces around us begin to exhale the day's accumulated warmth, creating convection currents that carry the mineral essence of heated stone, a dry, almost metallic fragrance that speaks of geological processes operating on timescales that dwarf human imagination. This thermal breathing of ancient rock mixes with the increasing moisture of dew beginning to form on every available surface, from spider silk to moss fronds to the polished railings of our floating sanctuary. Somewhere in the vertical gardens above, night blooming Jasmine releases its intoxicating perfume into air that grows thicker and more mysterious with each passing moment. The scent descends in invisible waterfalls, pooling in natural hollows before spilling across the water's surface like olfactory silk scarves that wrap around your consciousness with almost narcotic gentleness, encouraging thoughts to slow and scatter like dandelion seeds on evening wind. Your clothing has adapted completely to your body's temperature and the ambient conditions, creating a microclimate of perfect comfort that seems to anticipate your needs before you're conscious of them. The fabric breathes with you, expanding and contracting in sympathetic rhythm, while moisture from the increasingly humid air creates the subtlest cooling effect across your skin. Like being caressed by clouds, tiny midges perform mating dances in coordinated swarms high above the water. Their movements creating fluid sculptures in three-dimensional space that constantly reshape themselves against the darkening sky. These living mobiles catch the last indirect sunlight on their gossamer wings, transforming insect choreography into aerial poetry that speaks of reproduction, survival, and the eternal cycles that govern all life in this protected wilderness. The fjord's acoustic signature transforms as nocturnal creatures assume their evening territories, replacing the daytime chorus with sounds more suited to gathering darkness. Somewhere in the distance, a moorpark owl releases its distinctive two-note call, the sound echoing between cliff faces with haunting clarity before dissolving into the general murmur of water against stone, wind through unseen valleys, and the almost subliminal creaking of ancient trees adjusting to cooling air. Dew begins forming on the vessel's surfaces, each droplet a perfect lens that captures and inverts microscopic images of the world around us. Tiny upside-down landscapes, complete with reversed waterfalls and inverted peaks, creating a parallel universe visible only to those who notice the miraculous hiding within the mundane. These water jewels accumulate until surface tension can no longer maintain their spherical perfection, then release their grip to trace erratic paths down railings and deck planks like liquid breadcrumbs marking our passage through this aquatic maze. The chemistry of twilight air reveals new layers of complexity as cooling temperatures allow previously volatile compounds to stabilize and become perceivable to human senses. Now you can detect the earthy richness of decomposing leaves in hidden forest floors, the sharp ozone signature of distant lightning over mountain peaks, and something that might be the actual scent of starlight. That indefinable freshness that arrives only when day transitions to night in places far from human interference. Underwater, last rays of filtered sunlight create cathedral columns that shift and dance through the fjord's depths, illuminating previously invisible particles of organic matter that drift like snow in this liquid atmosphere. Schools of native smelt move through these solar spotlights in perfect synchronization, their silver bodies creating fleeting galaxies that form and dissolve with mathematical precision. Each fish a living star in constellations that exist for mere seconds before reorganizing into entirely new celestial patterns. Your pulse has become so synchronized with the fjord's natural rhythms that heartbeat, breathing, gentle boat motion, and distant water sounds have merged into a single harmonic frequency that seems to resonate through bone and tissue, creating vibrations that massage you from within while maintaining the most delicate contact with the external world of sensation and wonder. Temperature variations become more pronounced as evening settles, creating pockets of air that range from silkworm, where thermal masses release their stored energy, to velvet cool, where shadows have dominated since early afternoon. Moving through these invisible climate zones feels like swimming through layers of different media, each one requiring subtle adjustments in posture and breathing that happen automatically without conscious direction. Native glowworms begin illuminating their silk snares in caverns and overhangs too dark for human eyes to penetrate. Their blue-green bioluminescence creating constellations that mirror the stars beginning to appear in the narrow strip of darkening sky visible between the fjord's towering walls. These terrestrial lighthouses cast no illumination beyond their immediate vicinity, yet their presence adds a quality of magic to the gathering darkness that transforms our floating meditation into something approaching spiritual experience. The magnetic field variations created by the fjord's unique geological composition seem to influence the behavior of metallic objects aboard our vessel, causing the gentlest vibrations in railings and fixtures that create almost inaudible harmonics. Notes so low they're felt rather than heard, adding bass frequencies to the fjord's evening symphony that register in your chest and solar plexus as much as in your ears. Mist begins rising from the water's surface as air temperature drops below the dew point, creating veils of vapor that soften edges and blur boundaries between solid and ethereal, transforming familiar shapes into suggestions of themselves. Impressionistic sketches drawn in moisture and filtered light that shift and change with each subtle current of evening air. The distinctive clicking of bats hunting insects above us becomes more frequent as full darkness approaches, their echolocation creating rhythmic percussion that punctuates the growing silence like drops of sound falling into pools of quietude. Each click precisely timed and perfectly pitched to navigate a three-dimensional world invisible to human senses. Clusters of native orchids hidden in vertical crevices release their evening perfume, a fragrance so subtle it exists at the very threshold of perception, weaving through your consciousness like half-remembered melodies from childhood dreams. These epiphytic treasures, clinging to life on bare rock faces, demonstrate nature's extraordinary persistence in environments that seem to offer nothing but vertical challenges and exposure to elements that would defeat less determined life forms. The fjord's walls begin revealing their nocturnal personality as specialized mosses and lichens activate bioluminescent properties triggered by decreasing light levels, creating faint aureoles of green and blue radiance that outline ledges and crevices with living neon. These prehistoric light sources pulse with rhythms older than animal consciousness, their chemical processes unchanged since the Earth's atmosphere first welcomed oxygen-breathing organisms. Currents deep beneath our hull carry different densities of dissolved minerals, creating liquid strata that bend sound waves in unexpected directions, causing distant splashes and bird calls to arrive from seemingly impossible angles, as if the fjord itself has developed the ability to ventriloquize, throwing voices across water with the skill of an ancient storyteller, entertaining invisible audiences. Your skin registers the increasing humidity as a silk cocoon, gradually forming around your entire body, each molecule of water vapor contributing to an atmosphere so saturated with moisture that breathing becomes a form of hydration. Your lungs extracting not just oxygen, but the very essence of this aquatic wilderness, filtering it through tissues that seem increasingly adapted to this liquid environment. Submerged limestone formations create underwater resonance chambers that amplify and modulate the calls of marine life into complex harmonies, transforming simple fish communications into symphonic arrangements that rise through the water column like aquatic organ music, each species contributing its own voice to compositions that exist only in these specific acoustic conditions. The hull beneath your feet conducts vibrations from sources too distant or subtle for conscious identification. Perhaps the movement of deep currents against underwater cliff faces, or the settling of sediments in abyssal trenches, or even the gravitational influence of the moon beginning its nightly pull on these enclosed waters, creating rhythmic pressures that travel through solid wood-like geological heartbeats. Nocturnal flowers unfurl their petals somewhere in the darkness above, releasing pollinating fragrances designed to attract night-flying moths, whose navigation systems have evolved to distinguish between dozens of competing scents in air so thick with competing signals that each breath contains libraries of chemical information about the reproductive status of an entire ecosystem. Phosphorescent bacteria coating submerged rocks create underwater constellations that flicker in response to water movement, their collective glow providing enough illumination to silhouette the ghostly forms of crayfish and eels moving through their benthic territories, with movements so deliberate they appear to be participating in some ancient ritual whose meaning has been lost to surface dwellers. The taste of evening air evolves beyond simple purity into something approaching complexity, carrying molecular signatures of processes occurring miles away, salt spray from distant beaches, pollen from alpine meadows, even traces of volcanic gases seeping from thermal vents, hidden beneath layers of sedimentary rock, creating an atmospheric bouquet that tells the story of an entire geographical region through chemistry alone. Magnetic anomalies in the iron-rich cliff faces create compass variations that seem to influence your inner ear's balance mechanisms, producing sensations of weightlessness that come and go like gentle waves, making it difficult to distinguish between the boat's actual motion and shifts in your perception of spatial orientation, as if the fjord's gravitational field operates according to different physical laws. Tidal pools high above the current water line, carved during storms and filled by spray, support microscopic ecosystems that pulse with their own circadian rhythms, their billions of inhabitants creating chemical signatures that drift downward on evening air currents, adding notes of primordial life to the olfactory symphony surrounding our floating sanctuary. The wood of our vessel expands and contracts with temperature changes so subtle they exist below the threshold of measurement. Yet these molecular adjustments create acoustic variations in the boat's response to water movement, transforming our craft into a percussion instrument that plays itself, generating rhythms that synchronize with your breathing without conscious effort or awareness. Thermal inversions trap layers of differently scented air at various altitudes, creating olfactory stratification, where eucalyptus oils from distant forests float above heavier fragrances of decomposing kelp, while lighter notes of alpine snow melt hover at intermediate levels, allowing your nose to sample different climatic zones simply by tilting your head upward or downward. Caves hidden behind waterfalls exhale air that has been filtered through limestone for decades, emerging with mineral content so specific it creates taste sensations on your tongue even at a distance. The calcium and magnesium particles suspended in mist fine enough to pass through clothing and skin, delivering trace elements directly to your bloodstream through dermal absorption. The reflective properties of the water surface begin creating optical effects as starlight mingles with bioluminescence, generating patterns that exist only at the precise intersection of astronomical and biological illumination. Fleeting geometries that appear when cosmic radiation strikes microscopic organisms, causing brief flares of hybrid light that belong neither fully to Earth nor sky. Atmospheric pressure variations caused by the fjord's unique topography create subtle changes in your blood oxygen levels, producing gentle euphoria that arrives in waves, making colors appear more saturated and sounds more resonant without any conscious awareness of the physiological processes responsible for these enhanced perceptions of beauty and wonder. Underground streams carrying mineral-rich water from hidden springs emerge through cracks in submerged rock faces. Their chemical signatures different enough from the main fjord water to create taste variations detectable even in air saturated with their evaporation, adding metallic notes that speak of deep earth processes and the patient dissolution of ancient stone. Wind patterns trapped between cliff faces generate standing wave formations in the atmosphere above us, creating zones of absolute stillness bordered by areas of constant, gentle circulation, allowing seeds and pollen to hover motionlessly in midair before being swept suddenly sideways by invisible currents that follow three-dimensional highways known only to birds and insects. The electromagnetic signatures of our own nervous systems begin resonating with magnetic field variations in the surrounding geology, creating feedback loops between consciousness and landscape that blur the boundaries between internal and external experience, making it increasingly difficult to determine whether sensations originate from the environment or from some deeper communion between human awareness and the mineral intelligence of ancient stone. Microscopic ice crystals forming in the cooling air create prismatic effects too small for individual perception, but collectively significant enough to shift the quality of available light, transforming ordinary photons into something more complex, more saturated with information about the atmospheric conditions they've traveled through to reach your retinas. Your clothing's fibers expand microscopically in response to increasing humidity, creating thousands of tiny air pockets that insulate and ventilate simultaneously, forming a personal climate control system that responds instantly to temperature fluctuations while maintaining perfect equilibrium between your body heat and the cooling environment, making the transition from day to night seamless and imperceptible. The gravitational effects of water flowing through hidden underground channels create variations in local spacetime that sensitive individuals report as alterations in their perception of duration, with some moments seeming to expand into small eternities, while others compress into instantaneous experiences, as if the fjord's temporal field operates according to geological rather than mechanical principles, deep within caves accessible only to specialized marine life. Colonies of bacteria process methane and sulfur compounds through chemosynthesis, releasing byproducts that eventually reach the surface as fragrances, unlike anything produced by photosynthetic organisms, adding alien notes to the evening's chemical symphony that hint at forms of life operating entirely outside solar energy systems. Crystalline formations embedded within the fjord's granite matrix begin conducting subtle electrical charges as temperature differences between day and night create thermoelectric effects, generating fields so delicate they register only as the faintest tingling sensation along your spine, like invisible fingers tracing patterns of connection between your nervous system and the living circuitry of the mountain itself. Rare native bats emerge from roosts carved into pumice deposits, their flight patterns creating Doppler effects as they swoop past our vessel, their wing membranes generating frequencies that massage your eardrums with pressure waves soft as butterfly touches, each pass leaving momentary vacuum trails that cool the air around your temples with precision worthy of the most skilled acupuncturist. Subterranean waterfalls hidden within the cliff structure create resonances that travel through solid rock for miles before emerging as barely audible thrumming sensations you feel through the soles of your feet. These geological pulse points connecting our floating sanctuary to a vast network of aqueous arteries pumping life through the mountain's core, with rhythms measured in centuries rather than seconds. Lunar gravitational fields begin asserting their influence on the enclosed waters, creating microtides that shift the fjord's surface tension in patterns too complex for mathematical modeling. These celestial pressures massaging the boundary between liquid and gas until molecules dance between states, creating atmospheric conditions that seem to dissolve the difference between breathing air and absorbing essence. Native fungi growing in perpetual darkness behind lichen curtains release spores, engineered by evolution to survive in this specific microclimate. Their reproductive efforts adding dusty undertones to the evening air that carry genetic information from organisms older than flowering plants, connecting your respiratory system to evolutionary processes that predate human consciousness by millions of years. Quartz veins threading through metamorphic rock faces store and release piezoelectric energy generated by thermal expansion, creating localized aurora effects invisible to human eyes, but detectable as shifts in atmospheric ionization that make your hair follicles respond with subtle movements, each strand becoming a microscopic antenna receiving transmissions from the mountain's mineral nervous system. Underwater avalanches of accumulated sediment slide down invisible slopes in slow motion, their movement generating infrasonic vibrations that travel through water and wood to reach your skeletal system, where bone density variations create personalized resonances that transform your entire frame into a living tuning fork, calibrated to harmonize with geological frequencies older than vertebrate evolution. Carnivorous plants hidden in vertical bog gardens digest their prey through chemical processes that release aromatic compounds designed by natural selection to attract specific pollinators. These molecular advertisements drifting down to mingle with our evening atmosphere, adding notes of predigestion that somehow enhance rather than disturb the olfactory perfection surrounding our vessel's unhurried progress. Atmospheric rivers flowing between mountain peaks carry moisture loads from weather systems born above Antarctic ice sheets, their passage creating pressure differentials that massage your circulatory system with invisible hands, encouraging blood flow patterns that mirror the ancient currents these aerial waterways have followed for millennia, connecting your cardiovascular rhythm to planetary circulation systems. Microscopic tardigrades suspended in droplets of spray from distant waterfalls survive conditions that would destroy most life forms. Their presence in the air around us, adding a quality of indestructibility to each breath, as if inhaling these molecular survivors could transfer some fraction of their legendary resilience to human tissues through processes science has yet to discover or name. Thermal plumes rising from deep geothermal vents create convection columns that transport chemical signatures from the Earth's mantle directly to surface waters. These messengers from the planet's molten core, adding metallic overtones to our sensory experience that speak of processes occurring at pressures and temperatures incompatible with organic existence, yet somehow essential to the mineral foundation supporting all surface life. Bioluminescent algae respond to the presence of trace heavy metals by modulating their light output, creating patterns of illumination that serve as living pollution sensors, their collective glow providing real-time information about water chemistry invisible to human perception, but readable as subtle shifts in the blue-green fire trailing in our wake, transforming environmental monitoring into liquid artistry. Magnetic declination variations caused by iron ore deposits buried beneath millennia of sediment create compass anomalies that influence migrating birds' navigation systems, their resulting flight path, adjustments generating wing beat frequencies that add polyrhythmic percussion to the evening soundscape, transforming ornithological confusion into inadvertent musical compositions performed by creatures unaware of their artistic contributions. Acoustic shadows cast by irregular cliff formations create zones of selective silence where specific frequency ranges cannot penetrate, allowing previously masked sounds to emerge with startling clarity. The rustle of nocturnal marsupials in hidden tree hollows, the crystalline chiming of ice crystals forming in high-altitude caves, the almost musical grinding of glacier-polished stones, adjusting to thermal contraction with sounds like distant wind chimes made of granite, pheromone trails left by native moths create invisible highways through three-dimensional space. Their chemical navigation markers adding complexity to atmospheric chemistry that your olfactory system processes below conscious awareness. These molecular roadmaps influencing your own sense of direction through mechanisms evolution developed long before humans learned to navigate by landmarks, connecting your spatial orientation to instinctual wisdom encoded in genetic memory. Pressure waves generated by deep-dwelling fish, adjusting their swim bladders to changing depths, create acoustic phenomena that register as gentle massage sensations against your ribcage. These biological sonar adjustments transmitting information about underwater topography through vibrations that bypass your auditory system entirely, delivering spatial awareness directly to proprioceptive sensors that help your body understand its position within the fjord's three-dimensional architecture without conscious processing. Radon gas seeping from granite formations creates ionization patterns that influence local cloud formation. These radioactive traces generating weather systems on scales too small to appear on meteorological charts, but large enough to create personalized microclimates around our vessel, each passenger experiencing slightly different humidity levels and air pressures depending on their exact position relative to these invisible atomic fountains. Electromagnetic resonance between the fjord's mineral composition and cosmic radiation creates standing wave patterns in local spacetime that sensitive instruments would register as gravitational fluctuations. These astronomical harmonics influencing your inner ear's balance mechanisms in ways that make the boat's gentle rocking seem synchronized with celestial mechanics, as if our small craft has become a physical manifestation of orbital dynamics translated into human comprehensible motion. The evening's deepening darkness reveals phosphorescent bacteria coating the undersides of floating debris. Their collective radiance creating a secondary water surface composed entirely of living light. This biological mirror reflecting stellar positions with enough accuracy to serve as a natural planetarium for creatures capable of reading astronomical information encoded in bacterial bioluminescence, transforming the fjord into a living star chart written in the language of microscopic organisms. Native sundew plants clinging to vertical moss gardens begin their nocturnal hunting cycle, their sticky tentacles glistening with dewdrops that refract starlight into miniature prisons of liquid crystal, each trap a perfect sphere containing rainbow spectrums, visible only to insects drawn by the plant's deceptive beauty, their struggles creating vibrations that travel through interconnected root systems to alert entire colonies of carnivorous botanicals to the presence of protein-rich meals. Temperature gradients within underwater limestone caverns generate convection currents that carry dissolved calcium carbonate to the surface, where rapid cooling causes spontaneous crystallization, creating floating geometric sculptures that last mere moments before dissolving back into solution. These ephemeral mineral artworks forming and vanishing in cycles timed to thermal fluctuations too subtle for human detection, yet precise enough to maintain the fjord's chemical equilibrium. Colonies of native stick insects activate their nocturnal camouflage protocols, their exoskeletons shifting through color spectrums that mirror the changing light conditions with such precision that they become living extensions of the bark and lichen they inhabit, their presence detectable only through the faint rustling of leaves that shouldn't move in the still evening air, adding whispered percussion to the night's expanding orchestra. Deep sea tremors originating from tectonic adjustments hundreds of miles beneath the ocean floor transmit seismic whispers through bedrock that emerges as nearly inaudible humming in the fjord's granite walls. These geological lullabies vibrating at frequencies that encourage alpha brain wave production, naturally inducing states of meditation that arrive without effort or intention, simply through prolonged exposure to the mountain's own methods of stress relief. Atmospheric nitrogen fixing by specialized bacteria living within nodules on submerged root systems creates localized changes in air density that your respiratory system interprets as increased oxygen availability, producing subtle euphoric effects that manifest as enhanced color perception and heightened appreciation for minute details previously overlooked, transforming ordinary observations into discoveries worthy of extended contemplation and wonder. Juvenile eels navigate between thermal layers, using electromagnetic sensors along their lateral lines, their movements creating bioelectrical fields that interact with iron deposits in surrounding rock to generate weak but detectable magnetic fluctuations. These living compass adjustments influencing your own magnetic sensitivity in ways that make north feel slightly different than it did at noon. As if the fjord's definition of direction shifts with the day's progression. Droplets of condensation forming on spider silk create natural fiber optic networks that conduct available light along gossamer pathways invisible during daylight hours. These arachnid telecommunication systems, pulsing with information about wind speed, humidity changes, and approaching weather fronts, their data transmissions appearing as intermittent sparkles that seem to blink coded messages between shadows too dark for human eyes to penetrate. Volcanic glass embedded in ancient lava flows reflects infrared radiation from your body heat back as gentle warming sensations that seem to anticipate your need for comfort. These natural heating elements responding to your presence with thermal feedback loops that create pockets of perfect temperature maintenance, making the cooling night air feel like a precisely calibrated environment designed specifically for human relaxation. Microscopic diatoms suspended in water droplets act as biological lenses that focus moonlight into concentrated beams, thin as needles. These single-celled organisms creating laser-like effects that paint temporary tattoos of silver light across any surface they contact, including your skin, where the focused illumination creates warmth patterns that trace geometric designs too fleeting to photograph, but substantial enough to feel as gentle finger drawings across your arms and face. Native Galaxia's fish coordinate their feeding behaviors using lateral line organ communications that generate pressure waves detectable as rhythmic pulsing against the boat's hull. Their collective hunting strategies creating percussion sections that complement the evening's acoustic environment. These submarine drummers maintaining tempos that seem designed to encourage slower breathing patterns and deeper states of physical relaxation. Karst formations beneath the waterline channel, underground rivers through maze-like passages that emerge as hidden springs, their mineral-enriched contributions adding trace elements to the surface water that your skin absorbs through prolonged contact with humid air. These geological supplements delivering nutrients directly to your bloodstream through dermal pathways. Evolution developed for creatures spending extended periods in aquatic environments. Iridescent beetle populations emerge from bark crevices as temperatures drop. Their metallic wing covers creating mirror ball effects when they encounter any available light source, transforming their mating flights into aerial discos, where each participant becomes a flying jewel casting rainbow reflections that dance across water surfaces like celebration lights at a festival organized by insects for their own mysterious entertainment purposes. Pressure differentials between the fjord's enclosed atmosphere and external weather systems create gentle suction effects that seem to draw tension from your muscles through processes resembling atmospheric acupuncture. These natural massage techniques, operating through barometric changes, too gradual for conscious recognition, yet effective enough to release physical stress accumulated over days or weeks of daily life's accumulated pressures. Sulfur-reducing bacteria thriving in oxygen-depleted sediments produce hydrogen sulfide in concentrations so minimal they register only as a faint mineral essence that somehow enhances rather than detracts from the air's purity. These anaerobic processes adding complexity to atmospheric chemistry that makes each breath feel more substantial, more nourishing, as if the fjord's atmosphere has been enriched with nutrients unavailable in ordinary environments. Gravitational anomalies created by dense metamorphic rock formations influence your body's fluid distribution in ways that reduce inflammation and encourage lymphatic drainage. These natural therapeutic effects, manifesting as sensations of lightness and improved circulation that arrive gradually, almost imperceptibly, making you feel more comfortable in your own skin. Without understanding the geological reasons for this enhanced physical well-being, native cicada nymphs buried in soil pockets, lodged within cliff crevices, begin their multi-year countdown to emergence. Their underground activities creating subsonic vibrations that travel through stone to reach your bones as gentle massage frequencies. These patient insects contributing to the fjord's therapeutic environment years before they'll see daylight. Their preparatory work adding bass notes to a symphony they won't consciously join until future summers. Crystalline structures within schist formations store and release acoustic energy with such precision that they function as natural amplifiers for specific frequencies, selectively enhancing the most soothing sounds while dampening harsh or jarring noises, creating an acoustic environment so perfectly tuned for relaxation that your nervous system responds by activating parasympathetic functions, usually accessible only through deep meditation or professional therapeutic intervention. Chemical reactions between tannic acids leaching from submerged vegetation and dissolved minerals create complex organic compounds that your olfactory system processes as nostalgic fragrances, triggering memories of perfect summer evenings and childhood security. These molecular time machines connecting your present experience to emotional archives stored in neural pathways that remember safety and contentment with startling clarity and warmth. Bioluminescent fungi growing within hollow tree trunks that fell centuries ago create internal galaxies invisible from outside, but detectable as faint, warm glows emanating from seemingly solid wood. These fungal constellations, powered by decomposition processes that transform death into light, their patient work converting fallen giants into lanterns that will illuminate hidden spaces for decades after the tree's cellular structure has completely transformed into something between plant and mineral. Our vessel continues its dreamlike passage through these living waters, each moment expanding to accommodate deeper layers of sensory integration, your consciousness gradually synchronizing with rhythms that operate according to geological time rather than human urgency, creating space for the kind of profound restoration that emerges only when the boundaries between self and environment dissolve into unified experience, leaving behind nothing but pure awareness floating through paradise, made manifest in stone and water and light. Ancient rimu trees, their trunks wider than cathedral columns, lean across narrow gorges high above us, their interwoven canopies creating natural bridges that span impossible distances. Centuries of growth have woven their branches into living architecture, and now epiphytic gardens flourish in the aerial cities. These giants support entire ecosystems suspended between earth and sky, accessible only to the wind and the occasional wandering possum, whose nocturnal movements create gentle rainfall as dew shakes loose from disturbed leaves. The water beneath our hull carries memory in its molecular structure, each drop having traveled through countless forms: cloud, snow, underground river, thermal spring, before arriving at this moment of perfect stillness. Scientists speak of water's capacity to hold information in its crystalline arrangements. And here, surrounded by liquid that has touched every surface of this ancient landscape, you breathe air enriched with stories dissolved in vapor, each inhalation delivering chronicles written in hydrogen and oxygen bonds formed in places human feet have never walked. Nocturnal weta emerge from bark crevices, their antennae sampling air currents for chemical signals that speak of territory, food, and reproduction in a language composed entirely of molecular conversations. These wingless crickets, unchanged since the age of dinosaurs, carry genetic memories of a world when New Zealand floated alone in southern seas. Their presence connecting our evening to deep time when the very shape of continents followed different patterns across the globe's surface. Copper-green oxidation. Patterns bloom across exposed rock faces where mineral veins intersect with moisture pathways, creating abstract paintings that evolve with each rain shower, each season's temperature variations. These metallic gardens appear most vividly in twilight, when indirect illumination reveals colors invisible in direct sunlight, transforming cliff faces into galleries where chemistry serves as artist and time provides the canvas for exhibitions that last decades before weather erases them completely. Your breath creates miniature weather systems in the cooling air, each exhalation forming temporary clouds that drift away, carrying traces of your internal chemistry into the fjord's atmospheric library. These personal contributions to the evening's humidity merge with countless other sources: plant respiration, evaporation, the breath of hidden animals, creating a collective atmosphere enriched by the metabolic signatures of every living organism sharing this protected space. Submerged kauri logs, preserved by tannins and cold water, rest on the fjord floor like sleeping giants, their wood grains still visible through fathoms of crystal clear liquid. These ancient trees fell during storms that raged when Maori were still settling distant Pacific islands. Their timber now providing shelter for creatures that existed long before humans learned to navigate by stars, creating underwater monuments to forests that once covered landscapes now claimed by sea and stone. Native freshwater mussels embedded in sandy patches between rocks filter microscopic particles from the water column. Their biological processing creating clarity so perfect that distances become difficult to judge, depth perception challenged by transparency that makes the fjord's bottom appear simultaneously within reach and impossibly remote. These living filtration systems work continuously, maintaining water quality through processes older than human civilization. Their collective effort sustaining an aquatic environment pure enough to support species found nowhere else on Earth. Atmospheric pressure, waves generated by thermal air rising from sun-warmed cliff tops, create standing oscillations that your inner ear interprets as subtle elevation changes, making you feel alternately lighter and more grounded despite the boat's steady position on the water's surface. This natural barometric massage works directly on your vestibular system, encouraging balance and spatial awareness that extends beyond physical equilibrium into emotional and psychological stability. Hidden groves of native fuchsia burst with crimson blossoms designed to attract bellbirds, whose feeding behaviors have evolved specifically to match these flowers' nectar production cycles, creating partnerships between plant and bird that date back millions of years. The resulting aerial ballets of feeding and pollination add graceful movement to the vertical gardens, while fallen petals create scarlet drift patterns on the water's surface, temporary artworks that dissolve and reform with each gentle current. Microscopic zooplankton begin their nightly vertical migration from deep waters toward the surface, their collective movement creating density currents that register as the subtlest temperature variations against your skin. These living tides bringing nutrients and oxygen from the depths, while removing waste products through biological processes that maintain the fjord's ecological balance without human intervention or awareness. Their success measured in water clarity rather than economic metrics. Caves carved by persistent wave action during ice ages, when sea levels followed different patterns, now hang far above current water lines. Their entrances barely visible as dark punctuation marks against towering stone faces. Within these abandoned grottos, bat colonies raise their young in chambers decorated with mineral deposits accumulated over millennia, crystalline formations that transform ultrasonic calls into acoustic sculptures. Sound made visible through calcium and time. Steam rises from thermal features hidden among boulder fields, where underground hot springs encounter surface streams, creating localized fog banks that drift across the water like ghostly scarves woven from Earth's internal heat. These volcanic signatures remind us that beneath this peaceful surface, tectonic forces continue their patient work, building mountains grain by grain, while simultaneously wearing them away. Maintaining geological balance through processes that operate beyond human perception of cause and effect. Your fingertips, trailing through condensation gathered on polished surfaces, leave temporary trails that evaporate in patterns influenced by skin temperature, oils, and microscopic bacteria that call your body home. These ephemeral signatures create personal weather systems in miniature, your touch generating localized climate variations that last only moments, but demonstrate your physical integration with environmental conditions that respond to your presence in ways too subtle for conscious recognition. Native carnivorous snails emerge from hidden crevices, their hunting behaviors creating barely audible scraping sounds as specialized raduli work against stone surfaces, harvesting microscopic algae and bacteria through feeding strategies that predate vertebrate evolution. Their methodical progress across wet rock creates texture symphonies, audible only in perfect silence, adding granular percussion to the evening's expanding collection of natural sounds produced by creatures whose existence depends on conditions found nowhere else on the planet. Magnetic particles suspended in glacial flour create compass variations that shift with water currents. These iron-rich sediments generating local field anomalies that influence your proprioceptive awareness in ways that make spatial relationships feel slightly different, slightly more fluid, as if the fjord's geometry operates according to principles that bend physical laws just enough to accommodate forms of beauty impossible under standard gravitational conditions. Dissolved limestone creates alkaline conditions that interact with your skin's natural acidity to produce gentle, effervescent sensations, microscopic reactions that feel like champagne bubbles too small to see, but substantial enough to register as tingling awareness across any exposed surfaces. This natural chemistry set transforms prolonged contact with humid air into a spa treatment administered by geological processes that have maintained perfect pH balance for thousands of years without calibration or adjustment. Deep currents carrying signatures from distant oceanic systems arrive through underwater channels carved when continental drift positioned New Zealand's landmass according to different patterns. These ancient waterways delivering chemical messages from marine environments thousands of miles away, connecting the fjord's enclosed ecosystem to global circulation patterns through molecular communication networks that operate below human awareness, but above chance occurrence. Crystallization events occur spontaneously as cooling air reaches saturation points for dissolved minerals, creating momentary geometric displays that appear and vanish like visual music, each formation lasting only seconds before conditions shift and the crystals dissolve back into solution, leaving behind memories of perfect order emerging from chaos before returning to possibility. These demonstrations of natural mathematics, performed for audiences that rarely recognize their significance or beauty, our vessel drifts toward complete integration with its liquid environment. Every sensation now perfectly calibrated to encourage the deepest possible relaxation, your consciousness expanding to embrace rhythms that measure time in tidal cycles rather than heartbeats, geological patience rather than human urgency, creating space for restoration that reaches beyond physical comfort into realms where healing occurs through harmony with forces older than worry, deeper than stress, more patient than any earthly concern could ever hope to become. Somewhere in the darkness above, century-old mountain beech trees release their final pollen of the season, golden dust drifting down through still air like powdered sunlight, each grain carrying genetic instructions written in a botanical alphabet older than human language. This aerial snow settles on water surfaces with touches so delicate they create no ripples, only the faintest shimmer as microscopic landing craft complete journeys that began in wind-pollinated flowers blooming at altitudes where oxygen grows thin. And weather follows rules written by elevation rather than season. Your eyelids grow heavy with the accumulated peace of hours spent floating through liquid serenity, each blink lasting slightly longer than the last as your visual cortex gradually releases its need to process information, allowing other senses to expand into the space usually occupied by sight. Behind closed eyes, after images of granite walls and silver waterfalls continue their gentle dance. Memory paintings projected onto darkness that feels increasingly welcoming, increasingly complete. Native blue ducks navigate invisible currents along the fjord's edges, their specialized bills designed to filter nutrients from fast-flowing streams that cascade down faces too steep for most waterfowl to approach. Their soft churring calls blend with water sounds until bird song and liquid music become indistinguishable, creating audio textures that seem to arrive from the meeting place between species, neither fully avian nor entirely hydrological, but something altogether more mysterious. Trace amounts of gold suspended in granite veins create subtle electromagnetic signatures that interact with your body's bioelectric field in ways that promote cellular regeneration. These precious metal deposits functioning as natural healing accelerators that work through proximity rather than direct contact. Their influence measurable not in immediate sensations, but in tomorrow's increased energy, next week's improved sleep, next month's enhanced resilience to stress, accumulated in environments less generous with their therapeutic properties. Underwater meadows of native charophytes sway with movements too slow for surface observation. Their primitive photosynthesis creating oxygen bubbles that rise through the water column like liquid pearls, each one carrying dissolved gases in concentrations that enrich the air above with breathing experiences unavailable in terrestrial atmospheres, your lungs receiving supplemental nourishment through inhalation processes that feel increasingly effortless as your respiratory system adapts to conditions approaching perfection. Aboriginal earthworms inhabiting soil pockets lodged in seemingly impossible vertical locations, continue their patient work of breaking down organic matter into nutrients that feed plants capable of growing from pure stone. Their underground activities creating vibrations so minimal they register only as comfort, the kind of barely perceptible reassurance that comes from knowing life persists in every available niche, transforming inhospitable environments into gardens through determination measured in geological rather than seasonal time. Quartz crystals embedded throughout the surrounding geology begin conducting piezoelectric charges generated by temperature differentials between day and night thermal cycles. These natural batteries creating weak electrical fields that encourage your nervous system toward patterns associated with deep rest, cellular repair, activated through exposure to frequencies your ancestors experienced during millennia, when human sleep occurred in caves surrounded by similar mineral compositions, generating identical therapeutic waveforms. Dewdrops balanced on gossamer threads spun by money spiders create suspension bridge networks invisible until moisture makes them momentarily substantial. These aerial highways supporting creatures, so small they exist in size ranges where surface tension provides more structural support than gravity. Their microscopic cities spanning gaps between fern fronds with engineering solutions, evolution developed for organisms living in worlds where physical laws operate according to different proportional relationships. Your shoulders release tensions accumulated over years of carrying weights, both physical and emotional. Muscle fibers unknotting themselves in response to atmospheric conditions that seem designed specifically to encourage the deepest possible relaxation. Pressure points dissolving as if invisible hands possessed perfect knowledge of exactly which neural pathways require attention. Their massage techniques, administered through environmental factors rather than direct touch. Rare albino possums move through canopy highways far overhead, their unusual coloration making them appear like pale spirits navigating between branches with movements too graceful for animals of their size, their passage marked only by occasional leaf falls that arrive at random intervals, each one landing on water surfaces with soft percussion that adds unpredictable rhythm elements to the night's expanding symphony of natural sounds produced by creatures most humans never glimpse. Hydrogen sulfide seeping from deep thermal vents reacts with iron compounds in surrounding water to create chemical gardens that bloom and fade in cycles timed to underground pressure variations. These mineral flowers, existing entirely below surface visibility, yet contributing fragrances that add complexity to atmospheric chemistry. Your olfactory system processing information about geological processes occurring at depths where pressure and temperature would crush and melt any organic material. Gravitational microvariations created by the fjord's unique topography influence your circulatory system in ways that improve blood flow to extremities, hands and feet growing warmer despite cooling air temperatures, as your cardiovascular network responds to environmental conditions that seem to understand human physiology better than most medical equipment. Natural therapy, administered through forces invisible to consciousness, yet profoundly effective at cellular levels. Native stick insects adjust their camouflage patterns in real-time responses to changing light conditions, their exoskeletons shifting through color spectrums with precision that makes them living demonstrations of adaptive technology, their presence detectable only when movement betrays their location among bark textures that provide perfect concealment, until curiosity overcomes caution and they venture brief expeditions across territories that expose them to predators evolved specifically to recognize movement patterns rather than visual appearance. Deep within your relaxed physiology, endorphin production increases in response to sensory inputs your brain interprets as optimal environmental conditions. These natural opiates flowing through your bloodstream in concentrations that promote healing, reduce inflammation, and encourage the kind of profound rest that allows cellular regeneration to proceed without interference from stress hormones or anxiety chemicals that normally compete for your body's available resources. Microscopic tardigrades drifting in water droplets, suspended throughout the humid atmosphere, demonstrate survival capabilities that border on miraculous, their presence in every breath adding qualities of resilience to oxygen molecules, as if inhaling these virtually indestructible organisms could transfer some fraction of their legendary toughness to human tissues through respiratory absorption processes that operate below conscious awareness, but above accidental occurrence. Ancient Maori spiritual practices recognized this location as a place where the veil between physical and metaphysical worlds grows thin, their ancestral wisdom identifying properties that contemporary science measures through electromagnetic readings, atmospheric ion concentrations, and gravitational anomalies. Convergent knowledge systems reaching similar conclusions about therapeutic benefits available to those patient enough to receive healing that operates through harmony rather than intervention. Your breathing synchronizes completely with the fjord's own respiratory rhythms. Inhaling when thermal currents rise from warmed stone surfaces. Exhaling when cool air descends from peaks that touch clouds. This atmospheric partnership, creating meditation states deeper than any achievable through conscious effort, your entire being integrated into weather patterns that operate as planetary breathing exercises designed to maintain ecological balance through processes that include human participation. Whether or not awareness recognizes the collaboration somewhere beyond the edge of sleep, the distinction between floating on water and drifting through dreams begins to dissolve completely. Consciousness expanding to embrace liquid darkness that holds you with gravitational tenderness, every sensation now perfectly attuned to encourage the journey from waking awareness into restorative slumber, where healing occurs naturally, automatically, inevitably, surrounded by New Zealand's most sacred sanctuary of stone and water and infinite, eternal peace. The taste of sleep arrives on your tongue like honey dissolved in moonbeams. Sweetness without substance that signals your body's readiness to surrender completely to this floating sanctuary. Your pulse has become so quiet, it seems to echo the distant heartbeat of the mountain itself. Each beat separated by such peaceful intervals that time stretches like warm taffy between moments of awareness. Nocturnal orchids, hidden in vertical moss curtains, begin their midnight bloom. Petals unfurling with movements so deliberate they create their own microbreezes, releasing perfumes that exist for mere hours before dawn, triggers their retreat back into protective buds. These ephemeral fragrances drift downward on air currents that seem choreographed specifically to deliver their essence at the precise moment when human consciousness hovers between waking and dreaming. Natural aromatherapy timed to geological precision. Your scalp tingles with the gentlest electricity as charged particles from distant aurora activity filter down through Earth's magnetic field, creating crown-like sensations that seem to crown your head with invisible light. This cosmic massage works its way down your spine vertebra by vertebra, each neural connection receiving its own moment of celestial attention as stellar radiation transforms into terrestrial comfort through processes that blur the boundaries between astronomy and physiology. Rare native caddisfly larvae construct underwater castles from fragments of jade and serpentine, their architectural instincts creating miniature cities that gleam with green fire in depths where sunlight never penetrates. These industrious builders contribute to the fjord's crystal clarity through construction projects that filter water while creating beauty. Their engineering solutions elegant enough to inspire human architects, yet invisible to surface observers who benefit from their work without awareness of the tiny civilization maintaining paradise through pure dedication. Memory foam couldn't adapt to your body more perfectly than this evening air, which seems to cradle every curve and angle with atmospheric precision that anticipates your needs before muscles recognize their own requirements for support. This gaseous embrace responds instantly to position changes, maintaining optimal pressure distribution. Whether you lean forward to observe bioluminescent displays or settle back into complete relaxation, natural ergonomics administered through molecular adjustments in humidity and temperature. Underground rivers carved through marble deposits emerge as hidden springs that taste of liquid diamonds. Their mineral content, so perfectly balanced it seems designed specifically for human consumption. Droplets of this geological nectar evaporate into air that carries flavors of ancient purity, each breath delivering hydration through respiratory absorption, while your taste buds detect notes of calcium and magnesium dissolved in concentrations that support bone density and muscle function without conscious awareness of nutritional supplementation. Native glowworms begin lowering their silk threads from limestone overhangs, creating fishing lines that span gaps between cliff faces with bioluminescent lures designed to attract flying insects drawn by light sources that exist nowhere else in nature. These living fiber optic displays pulse with rhythms that seem synchronized with your increasingly drowsy brain waves. Their blue-green radiance providing visual lullabies that encourage the transition from active thought into receptive dreaming. Your clothing has achieved perfect equilibrium with skin temperature and atmospheric conditions. Fabric fibers expanding and contracting in harmony with your body's thermal fluctuations, while maintaining ideal ventilation ratios that prevent both overheating and chilling. This textile symphony operates through moisture-wicking technologies that evolution perfected in plant and animal systems long before human engineering attempted similar achievements. Natural climate control that responds to biological needs with efficiency impossible to replicate artificially. Thermal springs bubbling up through cracks in the fjord floor create localized warming zones that your feet detect through the boat's wooden hull. Heat transfer occurring through molecular vibration rather than direct contact, as warmth travels through timber grain patterns laid down when these planks grew as living trees, their cellular structure still capable of conducting comfort from Earth's internal fires to human extremities seeking temperature balance. Carnivorous sundews scattered across wet rock faces begin digesting their trapped prey through enzymatic processes that release amino acids into the surrounding atmosphere, protein molecules drifting on evening breezes to reach your nostrils as faint, savory notes that somehow enhance rather than disturb the prevailing freshness. These botanical digestive systems contributing to atmospheric complexity while maintaining the air's essential purity through natural filtration methods. Gravitational lensing effects created by dense mineral deposits bend starlight into soft focus patterns that seem designed specifically to encourage visual relaxation. Harsh points of celestial light transformed into gentle glowing orbs that pulse with rhythms matching optimal human sleep induction frequencies. These astronomical modifications occur through pure physics, yet feel intentional, as if the universe itself has adjusted its optical properties to provide the most restful possible viewing experience for creatures floating through liquid darkness. Your consciousness drifts toward complete dissolution into this aquatic meditation, thoughts becoming as fluid and transparent as the water supporting your vessel, memories softening into impressions as gentle as mist rising from surfaces warmed by residual thermal energy stored in stone that remembers summer afternoons and releases comfort gradually through night hours when healing occurs most efficiently, most completely, most peacefully in this sacred fjord where sleep arrives like blessing dissolved in liquid starlight, carrying you home to dreams as pure as New Zealand's most protected waters. Velvet silence wraps around you like cashmere clouds as our vessel glides through passages unmarked on any chart, where ancient landslides have created secret chambers accessible only when tides reach their lowest ebb. Here, in these hidden alcoves carved by chance and time, the air itself seems to hum with frequencies that exist just below human hearing. Not quite sound, not quite vibration, but something that resonates through your sternum like the purring of some enormous, invisible cat. Colonies of native liverworts carpet every available surface with textures resembling green velvet embroidered with silver thread. Their primitive forms representing some of Earth's earliest experiments with photosynthesis. These botanical ancestors exhale oxygen so pure it carries no trace of industrial pollution, no memory of combustion engines or factory smokestacks. Only the clean breath of prehistoric atmospheres when the planet's lungs first learned to convert sunlight into life-sustaining gases. Underwater, schools of native buoys navigate through liquid columns that seem to bend light in impossible directions. Their movements creating wake patterns that spiral upward like liquid DNA, carrying bioluminescent particles that paint temporary genetic codes across the water's surface. These living hieroglyphs appear and fade before meaning can be assigned. Organic calligraphy, written in languages that predate human alphabet systems by millions of evolutionary years. Your eyelashes collect microscopic droplets of moisture, so fine they feel like tears of pure contentment. Each one a perfect sphere, containing rainbow spectrums visible only when starlight strikes them at precisely the right angle. These personal jewels evaporate moments after forming, leaving behind sensations of having been blessed by something too subtle for naming, too gentle for anything but grateful acceptance. Native beetles emerge from bark crevices to perform mating rituals that involve percussion sequences tapped against hollow wood. Their rhythmic communications creating polyrhythmic patterns that seem designed to match the mathematical relationships between heartbeat, breathing, and brain wave frequencies associated with the deepest stages of restorative slumber. These insect composers work throughout the darkness, their concerts calculated to encourage biological processes that operate most efficiently when consciousness releases its grip on analytical thinking. Thermal layers within the water column create refractive zones that transform our boat's reflection into abstract impressions of itself, fragmented images that reassemble in configurations suggesting movement through dimensions, where physical laws operate according to dream logic rather than mechanical principles. These liquid mirrors show versions of reality that exist only in the space between perception and interpretation. Visual poetry written in water and dissolved light. Somewhere beneath your ribcage, tensions you didn't realize you carried begin melting, like ice crystals touched by spring sunshine. Cellular memories of stress dissolving into the general warmth that seems to emanate from the fjord's very atoms. This molecular comfort penetrates through skin and muscle to reach places where worry has been stored in fascial networks. Ancient survival responses finally receiving permission to transform into something approaching liquid peace. As our journey reaches its natural completion, you find yourself suspended between sleeping and waking in a realm where both states feel equally welcoming, equally true. The boundary between your dreaming consciousness and Milford Sound's eternal rhythms has become so transparent that you can no longer distinguish between floating on sacred waters and drifting through the most restorative sleep imaginable. Your spirit carried home on currents that flow through both inner and outer landscapes toward shores where healing happens naturally, effortlessly, inevitably, like morning light returning peaks that have waited patiently through countless nights for dawn's gentle resurrection of wonder.